Hello, and welcome to the 8th live discussion provided by the Apprenticeship Support Services. Employers are at the very heart of successful apprenticeship training. If they do not recognize the benefits of this type of training and they decide not to offer places, then apprenticeship training is really going to be in a difficult position. So what can be done to encourage employers, particularly in micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, to provide apprenticeship places? How can the challenges they're facing be overcome? We're fortunate today to have a panel of experts from all around Europe who will be able to provide us with all the answers. They represent different stakeholders, a managing director of an SME, a representative from an employers organization representing SMEs, a municipality that has worked with SMEs to provide apprenticeships, and a representative from a training provider that's advised all types of employers. Now, to our participants who are watching, please also feel free to leave comments or to ask questions in the chat box during the event so that we can raise these in our question and answer session at the end of the presentation. But before we kick off with the live discussion with our experts, we'd like to introduce Norbert Scherbel. He is the team leader for vocational education and training, apprenticeships and adult learning within DG Employment at the European Commission, otherwise known as Mr. Apprenticeships.
Thank you, Jeff. And is it really already the 8th live discussion? Yeah, I think we're doing quite a lot of activities. And as you rightly said, and welcome to the whole audience following our conversation, I think you're completely right. Without the employers, what would happen? They are really in the driver's seat. And without employers, we could not even think about having discussions on other issues like gender issues, apprenticeship for others. All that only can happen if we have strong employers. And today the focus is on SMEs because the small and medium-sized enterprise are the backbone of the economy, but they have and face more difficulties. And particularly under COVID, we know that these SMEs were hit most. And that's why we want to discuss it today. Just to say that the topic as such is not new. We have, since the beginning of the European Alliance for Apprenticeship, started to discuss the role of employers. Under the Alliance, we have currently about 30% of our stakeholders are companies, but the majority, more than 20%, are big companies. And we have also, with some, let's say, success, also succeeded to get SMEs be part of the alliance, but it is a real challenge. Now, I want to say that that is why we have renewed the alliance because of the increasing youth unemployment due to COVID. We have renewed the European Alliance for Apprenticeship last year, and we have now 6 priorities. And one of the 6 priorities is particularly how to give support to small and medium-sized apprentices so that they are able to make the supply happen and that we can call it, also quality apprenticeship, as we always say. Yeah? So there is, of course, the issue about long-term and short-term support, and there's also an issue about financial and non-financial support. Now, the previous years, we always have said that that non-financial support is even more important than financial one. But now, of course, after the COVID crisis, we know that financial support is also very important. And that is why the European Union has provided quite a substantial number under the Recovery Fund and also the Next Generation EU. There's a lot of funding available. And this also hopefully will then be available for companies and SMEs. For instance, we have a lot of possibilities when we talk about bonus systems for SMEs when they take apprentices. We're also thinking a lot of supporting intercompany training centers, for instance. It's not only about the infrastructure, but also to make it happen, so that they can share the costs, and also maybe the trainers for one part of the training. So there are a lot of activities, and also when it comes to curricula and so on. I don't think I need to go into the details, because the main advantage today is that we have quite interesting speakers who can share their experiences. As I just want to repeat that, as I said, I think again, and we will hear from the speakers, the non-financial support is also important, because there's a lot of administrative burden, particularly for SMEs, where this can be taken by other organizations, so that they don't need to struggle with directly hiring, for instance, apprentices for a small company. But I think let's listen now to our panel. I'm very happy, and I think, Jeff, you are the one now. You will introduce our speakers of today. Thank you. Now you're muted. Yeah.
Now I'm muted. That's a good start, isn't it? Thanks very much, Norbert, for setting the scene for us. There are clear benefits for employers. We know that. It's an opportunity to train young, but also older people to become skilled and qualified in their specific area of work. That's important for the employer, so that the enterprise can develop and prosper in the future. Moreover, at the end of the training, the apprentice will be familiar with the product or the service the employer provides. They will be familiar with the working environment. They'll be paid during the training, but less than a skilled worker recruited from outside the enterprise. They will most likely stay on after the apprenticeship, and it will not be necessary to go through other recruitment processes for other new workers. Employers may or may not, depending on national or regional circumstances, benefit from financial incentives for taking on apprentices. But there are costs, as Norbert has already said, financial and non-financial for the employer. And generally speaking, in all the discussions that I have on the question of apprenticeships, it's often the costs that loom large in the minds of employers. The list of costs is often longer than it is the list of benefits. Employers have to go through a vetting process and be registered, which can be a distraction. Employers need to find an apprentice. How do they do that in certain countries? They'll need to appoint an in-company mentor or tutor who will accompany the apprentice during the on-the-job training, and this person will not be available full-time to do his or her job. They need to establish a good working relationship with a local training institution to ensure that the off-the-job training is done in a relevant manner. They will possibly need to train the apprentice in things that are part of the apprenticeship curriculum, but not necessarily part of the daily job in the training experience. So they'll need to pay the apprentice as well, who will clearly not be productive in the initial stages of the apprenticeship. Moreover, the apprentice will be absent some of the time, engaged in off-the-job training in a local training institution. And of course, at the end of the process, or during and at the end of the process, they may lose the apprenticeship. Sorry, the apprentice. The percentage of contract terminations is often relatively high, and they may lose the apprentice at the end of the process, poached by another enterprise offering better wages and better conditions. So now what I'd like to do is, having set the scene, I hope, is to be able to ask our panelists today what they think. First of all, I will introduce them. First of all, we have Dominic Jenevijn, who is Managing Director of the furniture manufacturer EAfA. He's a member of the Austrian Economic Chamber and spokesperson for the Tyrolean Junge Wirtschaft, Young Economy organization. Dominic, who's from Innsbruck on the Austro-Italian border, took over the family business in 2016. He then went on to found his own carpentry company, which relies on a fully automated furniture production line and has an online shop enabling orders for individual furniture. In recent years, the business has grown, and today the company employs 12 staff members. 2 of which are apprentices. Our second guest is Ildiko Pataki, who is the Education Policy Advisor for the municipality of Reșița, Romania, and the Re-Edu Smart Initiative. Ildiko has a background in physics and a master's degree in European adult education and has spent the last 2 decades working as a social partnership expert, bringing together vet schools, employers, and local authorities to carry out the regional policy dimension and implementation. She's an education policy advisor to the mayor, and she's part of the urban regeneration program of Reșița, a small city with a dynamic revitalization process. Thirdly, we have Mirjam van den Broek, who is Senior Policy Advisor at MBO RAD, the Association for Vocational Education Institutions in the Netherlands, representing 62 government-funded vet schools and dealing with over 500,000 learners, including apprentices. In her previous career, she was director of a school for hospitality and wellness, where she frequently cooperated with SMEs who offered work placements to students. And fourthly, we have Silvia Miro, who is the Training and Employment Director of PIMEC, an employers association that represents the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in Catalonia, Spain. She's experienced of participating in several Erasmus Plus projects. She's involved in several regional decision-making bodies. Notably, she's a member of the SOC Board of Directors, that's the employment service in Catalonia, and the Commission for Studies on the Dual VET system of the Economic and Social Labour Council of Catalonia. So here we are. There's 4 eminent guests. We look forward to hearing what you've got to say. Now, we've got a series of presentations that we'd like you to make. The first block of presentations refers to employer motivation. Now, we all know that employer motivation matters, and it's an important issue, since the right incentives and conditions are needed for apprenticeship schemes to be established. I want to turn to you now and kick off by asking, based on your experience, how can employers be encouraged to establish apprenticeship schemes? If possible, please share concrete examples from your own experience. We've allocated 5 minutes for you for each speaker, and I'd be grateful if you could respect these timings. So, Dominique, it's over to you. Would you like to begin? Off you go.
Thank you, Jeff. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, very well.
Nice. Thanks for having me here on this very important matter. I think apprenticeships are a great way to learn your profession. And here in Austria, apprenticeships are pretty common, fortunately. We have a very good system in my eyes, but I know that in other EU states it's different. And for me, apprenticeships are great, and we offer them frequently because it is the best way to get first-hand practical experience for young people. But it is also a very good way for employers to get qualified employees. So how can we encourage employers to establish such apprenticeship schemes? I think both you and Norbert have already brought up a few very good points. I think a lot has to do with governmental fundings and incentives, because such an apprenticeship must not be a financial burden for the company. Otherwise, they will probably won't give them a chance. So in Austria, we have, for example, two months of the year's salary are paid by the government for apprentices, which is a nice help. But it's also a little bit different because 2 months of the year our apprentices are in a special school, which is also a very good point, because such specialized trade schools like we have in Austria are a very good thing also for us as employers, because our apprentices can get a very more widespread knowledge of the profession they are in. Because, for example, I do furniture. Also, I'm a carpenter, which only does furniture, but the apprentices learn in the school also the other aspects of carpentry, like building doors, windows, floors, and all this stuff, which is very good, because it also helps me in my company to have more widespread knowledge of the profession. And it's important for the young people to learn everything, but I am specialized in furniture, so I can't give them the chance to learn a lot about doors or windows. And here in Austria we have these schools, and I think that's a very good way to motivate young people to get into apprenticeships, and it's also a very nice way for employers to be sure that these apprentices learn a lot that maybe even their own company can't learn them. Also, one of the main points is that apprenticeships give companies the possibility to educate young people exactly like they need them to. Here in Austria, I am at the moment looking for one or maybe even two workers, two carpenters, but it's very, very hard to find one, because very good professionalists are not, there's not much of them here in Austria available, because every carpenter is looking for personnel. And so for me, and also for other companies, it's a very good way to create your own professionals. And I think we have to raise awareness for employers that by offering apprenticeships to young people, you can get these people, you can build them yourself, so to speak, which is very important, because otherwise the only way to get more people working for your company is by paying higher wages than others, or by, I don't know, maybe offering some other incentives, which are also a financial burden often. But by offering apprenticeships for young people, we can create them our own. And I think that's a very important fact that more employers should need to know, because already after a very short time, these people can work in the company and be a very useful employee.
Thank you very much, Dominique. It's very interesting to see what you're having in terms of financial incentives in Austria. And that is something specific to the Austrian situation, a very important area of support. Let's go now over to you, Ildiko, and tell us what you're doing in your country to support SMEs as far as apprenticeships are concerned.
Thank you so much, and welcome to everybody for this meeting. I am very proud to represent Reșița, which is a small city in Romania with less than 100,000 inhabitants, in beautiful surroundings, but decreasing population, because we come from a former mono-industrial economy, and the immigration of the population is very representative. The qualified people are leaving the country. As a result, we have a lack of traditional local economy, and it is very interesting to ask the question: what can do a municipality in this condition? So no local economy, you lose your traditional economy, no qualified workforce, and what you can do. And I am very proud that this municipality decided to invest in apprenticeship. The municipality considered the apprenticeship as a solution, as a starting point for the solution for the whole community, and decided to invest in apprentices, covering with a full coverage of the living cost for each apprentices, which is very important because, as you know, apprenticeship is not the most attractive educational pathway. So by covering the full cost for the apprentices, this pathway become a little bit more competitive. And this is very interesting in our condition when I know that we don't have a very well-developed economy, meaning that no taxes for the municipality. And even in this situation, the decision to invest in the people is very important. I am happy to be part of this project. But the municipality, is attracting European funds for various needs of the municipality. And one of our main aim is to invest the next coming funds in a competence center. So we need to have a very well-equipped competence center to support the SMEs, the apprentices from the SMEs to acquire the basic skills and to cover, at least partially, the cost for this competence center. This competence center needs to be built. We are very aware of the fact that needs to cover not the existing competencies, the existing needs of competencies. Actually, we don't have any needs of competencies. We are not having too much economy. So then we are looking forward to next coming qualification and competencies. Shortly, this is about our city.
Okay, thanks very much. That's interesting to see that even at the level of a smallish town or a medium-sized town, it's possible to start with a program that can support this type of work. And it's not only being left to the region or to the national level to be able to support apprenticeship training. Thanks very much indeed. And now, Miriam, it's your turn.
Yes, thank you, Jeff, after all these inspiring examples already. In the Netherlands, as you might know, we already have a long history of dual learning, and we have the work-based learning system and the school-based learning system, the 4 days paid work, 1 day school, or the 5-day school and a longer period of internships. That's why our education system is designed in such a way that an internship is part of every VET training. So in normal times, we do not need that much encouragement to convince employers to establish internships. However, because companies were closed due to COVID, it was an extra challenge to have sufficient internships available this year. So thanks to fundings from the national government, we developed an action plan on national level to find sufficient internships for all our 500,000 VET students. And we were convinced that it is important that it's not only about encouraging new SMEs, new companies to offer apprenticeships, those who never did this before, but we also needed the SMEs who were already familiar with the concept to continue offering internships because they already know the system. And in the action plan we developed, we tried to recruit additional apprenticeships at recognized training companies, and we updated the vacancies of apprenticeships so students could easily find a suitable place. And we also made it possible for students to do a part of internship in different companies. Like Dominique mentioned before, it is possible to get experience in different companies, and the school does some extra work. So my point is, as SME, you should provide internships not only at the good times, but also in bad economic situations, because you might need these students in more prosperous economic situations in your company as future employees as well. So not only invest in them in good times, but also think about it in bad times. That's from my point of view.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Very interesting to hear that you have set up a national campaign, in fact. That's a really interesting way forward, because clearly there's no doubt at all that you've got to keep, or you've got to get the new ones in, but you've also got to make sure that the enterprises with which you've worked on numerous occasions before are still willing to be able to provide apprenticeships, because there are so many good reasons. In fact, I'm sure in the minds of human resource managers that perhaps, well, they could, perhaps this year, because it's a special year, it's a difficult year with the COVID crisis, perhaps it would be possible to do a little bit less. But in fact, it's interesting that you, with your campaign, have been able to launch initiatives to ensure that you've got as many employers involved as is possibly the case. So that was very interesting as well. And now, Sylvia, how about you?
Thank you, Jeff. First of all, I want to thank you for the invitation to participate in this interesting meeting. It's a pleasure for me and for PMEC to share our actions and ideas about apprenticeships. As said, PMEC is the social partner who represents SMEs self-employed in Catalonia. That it's the main business sector in Catalonia, since they account for more than 99% of the total number of companies here and 70% of the jobs in our country. In 2019, we conducted a study on what motivates companies to participate in apprenticeship and in dual-based training system. And it's clearly seen that the main reason is the possibility of training in the skills required by the company, 21% of companies. This is very representative because in Spain, we have an important skills mismatch. In fact, Spain rates one of the last positions in the European Skills Index, which represents this mismatch. So apprenticeship is a very good tool that is contributing to solve the problem of the mismatch between school contents and the company's skills needs. The next reason is to seek apprentices and train and hire future qualified workers. 76% of companies answered this reason. In fact, more than 70% of apprentices who participate in Catalonia are hired when they finished. Currently, youth unemployment rates are high, and there are several vacancies without professionals to hire. The jobs offered are highly technical and require specialized skills, mainly linked to that. For example, in industrial sectors such as metallurgy and industrial maintenance, and nowadays digital sector too. The problem is again the mismatch between the level of people qualification and the needs for job qualification. On the other hand, a bed system is not enough agile in adapting to dynamic labor market changes. An apprenticeship, we think that allow the company to train in these new skills, assuming a training role in the system. This role allows and ensures flexibility of learning pathways and a better future employability. On the other hand, approximately half of the companies indicated that participating in apprenticeship can reinforce the training culture of the company and generate many synergies with the continuous training of workers. So that's a good reason too. And therefore, we believe that apprenticeship can respond to companies' real needs and SMEs' real needs, incorporating professional skills required by the sector in the apprenticeship period. The knowledge transferred in the training professions closely cover what is needed in companies. So apprenticeship can contribute to increase competitiveness and encourage economic growth. And that's it for now. Thank you.
Jeff, you're muted.
Again, it's very interesting to see the point that you made of saying that many apprentices go straight from their apprenticeship onto a full-time job. A very important point, not some partly for the employers, because that means that they've got a steady flow of staff, but it's also very important for the apprentices themselves, because then they're in a position to be able to guarantee their own future in terms of work. So that's very, very, very interesting. Thanks very much for your inputs there. Let's go on to the second question, and that's to do with the challenges that are facing employers. So the next question is, what are the challenges facing employers, and in particular SMEs, in your countries and in your regions when implementing apprenticeships? This could be before an apprenticeship starts, during an apprenticeship, or indeed after an apprenticeship. How can these be overcome and these challenges? So we've got a little bit less time for this one. So we'll start off as well with, we'll change the order, and let's start off with Ildiko.
Okay, thank you so much. So you are hearing me? Yeah, that's fine. So concerning the challenges that the companies are facing, I would like to make a difference between the existing companies and the companies we are expect to come or to be created in our city. It's talking very concretely about our situation. So the existing company, we have a few existing company. They are facing one of the main challenges is related to the aging phenomenon of the employees. So the average age of the employees is above 50, and this is a big challenge for them. This is why they are involved mainly in apprenticeship, hoping that they will get some graduates with the right skills for according to their needs. The companies we expect to come need to be very flexible and need to be adapted to the global economy. And for them, the main challenge is that they don't find the right skills on the labor force. They don't find the qualification in the VET system. They don't find the structure of the skills and competencies they really need. And for both of these categories, we can add another challenge. All these SMEs are in a very difficult competition with the big companies. As Mr. Apprenticeship Norbert said, even in our alliance, there are mainly big companies and not SMEs. And there is a big competition also for get the right qualified graduates between the SMEs and the big companies. The SMEs, at least in our situation, they don't have the power, the financial power to invest in training. They cannot afford to have a training specialist working especially with the apprentices. They cannot afford to have special workshops for the few number of apprentices they have. They cannot pay for many of the apprentices, while a big company can afford to have special training specialists and to fully pay the qualification, let's say, for 10 graduates, and then employ only 2 of them, to choose the 2 best of them, leaving the 8 not best qualified graduates for the SMEs. So these are the challenges I can mention for our SMEs.
Okay, thanks very much, Ildiko. Now we're on to Miriam. Would you like to answer this question, please, from your perspective in the Netherlands?
Yes, of course, Chef. Thank you. And I will try to give a short answer, because maybe you know that in the Netherlands a few years ago we developed an internship protocol. And this is a fixed plan, and this includes all rights and obligations for the schools, the students, and the companies. And it's divided into the 3 phases you mentioned in your questions. It's about preparation, implementations, and evaluation of the internship. So it is about all the 3 phases of the internship. And all accredited companies work with this protocol. So every participant knows beforehand what can be expected and what his task is. Schools take care of preparing the students before starting the internships and help them finding the right place to find a good working experience. And in the action plan I mentioned before in the first question, the government stimulates by providing enough funding for extra manpower to develop instruments and support companies. For example, with online coaching and attention for working from home, which is a challenge, especially for internships at companies who totally or partly switched to work from home, like in administrative jobs. That's an extra challenge. And besides that support, companies can also use special allowances or settle costs by taxes. So maybe that's in short the answer how we solved it in the Netherlands.
Could I just ask you one question, Miriam? When you talk, this is very, very interesting, this idea of an internship protocol. Is that also for apprentices, or is it primarily for school-based or work-based learning type?
In fact, it's for all kinds of types of learning as well, school-based as work-based learning, because they all have the same right. Well, not all the same rights, but they have lots of rights and things in common. So we've been written down in that protocol.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very interesting. And we'll now pass over to you, Sylvia. Go ahead.
Thank you. Dual-based training system in Catalonia is still incipient since 2012. Currently, not all vet schools offer this possibility to their students, although its implementation is growing. Only 1% of the total Catalan companies are participating in dual vet, and the weight is concentrated between medium and big companies, especially in big companies, more or less 20%, and the remaining are small and micro companies. In our study of the benefits that companies receive from participating in apprenticeship that I mentioned before, we also asked about what are the reasons why companies, especially SMEs, do not participate. And the main reasons have to do with the lack of resources to dedicate to adequately train the person in their learning, as well as the administrative management that this entails and excessively bureaucratic process. The second most important reason for their low participation is that they don't know the system well enough. In fact, main reasons why SMEs, especially small ones, are not willing to participate are inadequate information, and at the same time, but the schools haven't got enough resources to dedicate to inform and encourage to participate in apprenticeship to all small companies. Of course, it's easier to do it with big companies. And in the other hand, by participating in apprenticeship, as said, companies assume an important responsibility with the acquisition of technical and social skills. So the company is an active player in qualification process through apprenticeship that implicates an important investment that not only SMEs can dedicate.
Thanks very much, Sylvia. I think you've put your finger on a point that's been made by others too, is that there is a real difficulty of enabling SMEs to know what's happening, to see ways in which that they can be involved in the system, to see what are the benefits and what are the ways in which they can perhaps get assistance during this process. And I would have thought as well that an SME organization like your own would obviously have a key role in making the link to these people who might be 2, 3, 4, 5 people within an enterprise, because clearly they don't have the resources to be able to keep an eye on these matters over a long period. Thank you very much. And then we'll just off you go.
Okay, thank you. Well, here in Austria, we have it a bit different because there's also in Austria there's a difference between Eastern Austria and Western Austria, because here in Western Austria, where I live, the situation is such that an apprentice, if there's one apprentice, then there's 2 companies looking for apprentices.
Oh, wow.
So there's less apprentices than offered jobs or offered apprenticeships. But in Vienna, in Eastern Austria, it's completely different, because there is much more apprentices looking for apprenticeships.
Mm-hmm.
And in Austria, the system itself, in my opinion, is a very good one. We have incentives, we have fundings, we have a very well-working double-based system with school and companies. But what we in Austria lack often in society in general is a kind of knowledge what an apprenticeship can give you in the end, because parents are often telling their children, go to university, because if you're going to study, for example, law, medicine, pharmacy, whatever, then you will later on have a nice job, get a lot of money, etc. And often people go to school because they are kind of pushed into it by their parents, whilst they actually would maybe like to do something with their hands, like a profession such as carpentry in my case. So we also in Western Austria we need to raise more awareness that apprenticeships give you very good career chances, more than raising awareness in companies to offer apprenticeships, because we have very much companies offering such apprenticeships. But what we do have as a problem is something like law problems in our protection law for the apprentices. Because if you are on a construction site, if you have an SME that's doing buildings and stuff, and you are on a construction site and your usual workday ends at 5, and you have an apprentice with you, you need to be back in your company at 5, because they are not allowed to do extra hours. So you have to quit the job at like 4:30 and need to go back to your firm to bring your apprentice there, because he's not allowed to stay any longer. And even if that means that you have to go there again, maybe drive another hour the next day just to finish the job for another 2 hours or so, and that's a problem. It's very important to have specific laws protecting the apprentices, but in my opinion, they are sometimes a bit too strict. And also, what we would benefit of is better funding for adult people that are going to do an apprenticeship. For example, someone who is 25 has a much higher cost of living than a 15-year-old student or 15-year-old teenager that is still living with his parents. Because at 25, you maybe have your own flat, your own apartment, your own car, and you need to earn a lot more money to cope with these financial burdens that you have. And this again means that the company needs to pay more, even though you are an apprentice who's just starting and therefore still has to learn a lot of the profession.
Thanks very much indeed. I think there are a number of issues there. One was the geographical one, and clearly there in all countries there is a problem about where the company lies in relation to the vocational education and training institution that would provide the off-the-job training. And it's certainly the case that in some countries, young people have to travel long distances to ensure that they can follow both of those training venues. And the other point that you made, which also is an interesting one, is the extent to which now we're starting to see slowly in some countries, but more quickly in others, the question of what are now being called adult apprentices, that is to say older apprentices. And this is an interesting way of upskilling for people not necessarily of immediate school leaving age. Okay, well, that's also very interesting. And let's go on to the last question then. And this one's about, in your experience, how can stakeholders best collaborate to support employers to establish apprenticeships? And is there a magic formula? And if there is, well, we all want to hear it. So we look forward to you telling us what we can learn, which will solve all the problems. And the first person who's going to solve all these problems is going to be Miriam.
Well, I'm very proud that you think that we have all the problems and we can solve them. But I think we have found a magic formula, Jeff, for stakeholders to work together. In the Netherlands, we work together in the Foundation for Cooperation on Vocational Education, Training and Labour Market, named SBB. You might have heard about it. And within SBB, the Vocational Education and Training, the VET schools, and the labour market cooperate at national, sectoral and regional level together. So SBB is, as far as I know, rather unique in Europe, as SBB is a kind of table where the providers on one hand and social partners on the other hand are coming together with equal representations, and where the most crucial issues about VET and the demands of the labour market are discussed. Like apprenticeships, that's one of the important items which are discussed on a regularly basis with all partners on national level. So if there are issues or needs from the companies regarding apprenticeships, we all try to find solutions, and this will also help other companies in the sector. So that's one of the magic formulas, Chef.
Very interesting. It is. Yes, it is a magic formula. Well done. That's really super. It's interesting, I think, to see how it's possible to get the different stakeholders involved. And certainly that probably answers some of the questions about communication with the small enterprises, because particularly those people who are involved in setting up these different training programs will be able to take that information back to their own organizations. So that was very, very interesting indeed. So Sylvia, you're next. Would you like to answer the question?
Yes, in fact, PMEC has been working to create a magic formula that it's Mancommunal mentor. It's like a joint mentoring as a recognized and formal role in Catalonia dual vet system. This Mancommunal mentor is a support structure for small companies, for a group of small companies that can be established in an employers association, for example, with the functions of informing and encourage small companies in the same sector or similar activity, coordinating the companies with vet schools, participating in the preparation of the apprentices, activities plan, and monitoring the activities that the apprentice develops, having this support to companies, and other supporting functions in the tutoring, in the mentoring. We are convinced that it's a very good solution because it solves the main reasons why companies are not participating. And this initiative was approved by the government 2 years ago in 2019 and was published in 2020. And currently, there are some companies that are willing to participate with this formula, but assume 100% of the additional cost involved in this Mancommunal mentor is an impediment. That is why we are analyzing the options to find financial support with public funds. Another solution to promote participation of SMEs is to introduce a certain degree of flexibility to adapt to their needs, like Mancommunal mentor, but another new organizational initiatives. In this sense, the government accepted some elements to give more flexibility to better schools and companies to design of the activities that apprentices will develop in the company, giving more flexibility because not all activities in the curricular contents is possible to develop or to be learned in the small company. So it's a formula that is approved and now is working yet. Finally, in 2019, we organized the first vet Congress in Catalonia with all stakeholders involved to exchange European best practices in apprenticeship and involve SMEs as training role in learning system. At the same time, we implemented singular projects supporting unemployed young people through guidance, orientation, and training in skills needed by companies who participate in these projects too. And we are organizing the second vet Congress in Catalonia on November in Barcelona. So we continue in these actions, and all of you are invited, of course. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sylvia. Very interesting, particularly the first point that you made. And I think this is something that you're obviously looking at in all your organizations, is the extent to which it's possible to support the apprentice, but with an in-company mentor or a trainer from within the company, and then to be able to provide the education and training for these particular in-company mentors. It's a really big, important issue as well in the overall discussion about quality for apprenticeships, and it's, I'm sure, a very welcome step that you're taking. So another magic formula. So off to you now, Ildiko, for the next magic formula. Is that correct?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Talking about SMEs, we are having in mind that the main source of competitiveness of the SMEs is their flexibility and adaptability to the needs of the global market. This is what we could notice also during the COVID period. So the first companies who very quickly adapted to these changes were the SMEs. And the adaptability and the flexibility actually can be translated in new competencies for the employees, for the graduates. And we need to develop through the apprenticeship these new competencies. But we are facing some problems because the old paradigm to forecast the new skills, it seems that doesn't work. So we don't have the time to prepare and to deploy some surveys to ask the employers what their needs will be in 6 months, in 1 year, and then to go to the vet schools, to apprenticeships, and to develop these skills, because this long process is too long in comparison with the reaction time of the small companies. So we realized that in our magic formula, we need to be very proactive, not to wait the request, the needs from the companies, but to go forward and to prepare the students for the new skills of the economy, for the economy which doesn't exist right now. And our magic formula consists in building a so-called ecosystem. I told you that we are a small city, and because it's a small city with lack of traditional economy, it's not very interesting for the investors. They could come in our city, but they would like to have a well-qualified workforce. But our workforce is leaving the city because we don't have companies. So our magic formula is to build this new ecosystem together with the new coming investors, together with the vet schools, with the local support of the authorities at the universities. And our formula is going to robotics. So in the very next period, we invite investors working in IT, especially in robotics, and we are offering them the possibility to adapt our vet system or apprenticeship together with the universities and the local support of the authorities to prepare the workforce with what they need, without waiting until at national level we will have a new qualification with new competencies introduced in standards. So this is what we are doing right now, and we hope to have some good results, to stop the emigration of the workforce and to attract this new kind of investors.
Thank you very much, Ildiko, and that's really interesting too. And it's a subject which is of importance to all of us. Is the extent to which it's possible to anticipate what's going to happen and to react, because some of our apprenticeship systems are quite complex, and for them to be able to react quickly to the changes that we're seeing within the economy and then prepare the training to support the skills development is really quite a big and complicated issue. So there's 4 magic formulas from you all. Thank you very much indeed. But it's not the end of your work. I'm not quite sure how you're going to do this, but I look forward to seeing the results. And you've been asked to put in a tweet, or to prepare a tweet, which is 140 characters, what you've learned in today's session and what your key takeaways were. What would that tweet be? So who would like to, you're all looking a bit shy now suddenly, and so perhaps you Well, I look forward to seeing to see what you've done. Let's start with Dominic.
A tweet is very short, so it's always pretty difficult to put such an important and such a big task into so little space. I would go with something like apprentices are a great chance for companies to get qualified employees, and governments need to act now to create better incentives and funding to make apprenticeships interesting for employees. Something around this.
Thank you very much. That was quite a long tweet, but certainly a very interesting one. So thanks very much. Next, Miriam.
Yes, that's difficult. It could be something combining what we learn here and what we learned from the COVID crisis. So it might be something like a crisis provides new insights for cooperation agreements regarding apprenticeships, something like that. That's less than 140 initials, I think.
Muted, Jeff.
Yes, excuse me. Yes. By the way, for the other people who are watching and listening, if you've got any tweets yourselves of 140 characters, send them in, and we'll put them up for presentation to give you a chance to be able to see your tweets go Europe-wide. Ildiko, you.
Yeah, I would like to take the opportunity to send for everybody to these very interesting and different ideas, and that my tweet say that we can learn from the others, and don't be afraid to change.
I think that's very good in terms of the number of characters, and also very good in terms of the message. So thanks very much for that. And over to you now, Sylvia.
Okay. Apprenticeship is a very value option for SMEs. So recognizing their training role will encourage their commitment. A little long.
Let's say that we can be quite relaxed about the number of characters, given that we actually haven't got to put it into Twitter. So I think we'll do that in terms of what is a good message, rather than exactly how many characters it's got. Oh yes, as Norbert is saying here on the chat, the characters for the tweets seem to have doubled. Yes, well, you've obviously got so much to say, so you can't just. It's very difficult to boil these things down to just 140 characters. Now we've got a little bit of time left, and there's some questions that have been popping up, and I've got one here, and I wanted to, excuse me, just go into that a little bit. Yes, perhaps this would be interesting. Perhaps it's been asked of you, Miriam, but it might be interesting to ask others as well. What do you think the legacy of COVID is going to be in terms of how apprenticeships are set up? At the moment, I'm sure there's a certain amount of distance learning and very little face-to-face learning. For some things, you can do that for administrative jobs, but if we look at Dominic, it's going to be very difficult to be a carpenter at a distance, I imagine, and very difficult to be able to train about carpentry and furniture making at a distance. But let's start off with you, Miriam.
Yes, that's very interesting, because we are very busy now at the moment, again, on national level, to do an evaluation on what COVID brings us. On positive things, and I expect that we will continue with the benefits from distance learning and working from home, also for apprenticeships. But we do not yet have the results from all sectors, because it differs if you have, for instance, an apprenticeship or in hospitality. It's different from an apprenticeship in administrative jobs or education, or when you want to become a nurse, it's different as well. So we have to wait for the results for that from that evaluation.
Thank you very much. Dominique, you were making some sort of communication to me, if only with your physical features, when we were talking about the question of distance learning for different types of jobs. Was it correct what I was saying, that with COVID now, it's been difficult for you to be able to carry out your work with apprentices?
Absolutely. As I said before, here in Austria, if you do carpentry as an apprentice, you are 10 months in the company, in 2 months at school. And during the COVID crisis, these schools were closed. They were in distance learning. So theoretical stuff about carpentry you can do by distance learning. That's not a problem. But if you have to work with machines, if you have to have the materials, they don't have them at home. Not every student has the wood at home, or maybe some have a little. Maybe their father has a little cellar with 1 or 2 machines where they can just do little basic stuff. But that's maybe 5%. All the others don't have the chance to get practical knowledge about what they are learning in schools, and that was really a big problem. And also our apprentice was part of this homeschooling, and he said it was just it was a joke actually. But I know there was no other way. There was no other possibility, because you have to work with machines, you have to work with wood, and you can't do that via distance learning. But the COVID crisis didn't allow us to have the groups all together, 20 people in one room. So I hope that COVID is over soon, at least over as much as that it's allowed again to be in schools and doing technical stuff there, because in such jobs such as carpentry, there is no way of distance learning. It's just simply not possible.
Thanks very much, Dominique. We've got a question as well. You mentioned, Ildiko, that in your region there are a number of older workers. Do you think there is a possibility of them being brought into an apprenticeship system, or how do you think it will go in your particular area?
Well, the question maybe has two phases. So first of all, talking about adult learners, yes, there is a real need to them for some kind of upskilling, reskilling tools. But the existing apprenticeship system, even is possible to enroll young and adult people, is not very popular among them, because an adult cannot really afford to follow an apprenticeship program for 3 years. They are really under the pressure to get money, and so they will accept the first workplace just to get money as soon as possible. And the first workplace very often for our workers is somewhere abroad. And this is very, very a big issue for us. So I think that we need to develop another system, a special system for the adults for apprenticeship, really a shorter one, which can be affordable for them, and which needs to be combined with the possibility to assure the living cost for them and for their families. So the actual system, answering your question, I am not really consider that is properly for adult learners.
Thank you very much indeed. And we've just got one short question, if you can be brief, Sylvia. You mentioned the in-company mentors, and you're setting up some training for them. What's been the response? This is a question that's come in. What's been the response from people in SMEs to this training program?
Yes, as I said, now the difficulty is the finance support, and the government is agreed to implement this role, this structure, but it's not clear who is going to invest in this. And now the only initiative that is going on is paid by an employer association.
Yes, so that is a clear concern in terms of this area of work for SMEs. Okay, well, I found that fascinating, so I hope that our audience has as well. And we're getting towards the end of our time, but I'd like to invite Norbert in to conclude on the meeting, and then we will just have a few more minutes to be able to discuss this. But Norbert, it's over to you.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank to all the speakers. Let me first of all give the title of Mr. Apprenticeship back to all of you. Give all Mr. and Mrs. Apprenticeship, and all the 4 speakers, and including Jeff, of course. And because you all have one thing in common, I think you see apprenticeship as a solution. And I will not be able to conclude, make a summary, but may I please allow me to react to each of you in a few sentences. I would like to start with Dominique, because my father actually did an apprenticeship in a furniture company. And of course, the situation, as you said, even between West and East Austria, is that indeed you are looking for qualified employees. But what you do is quite important. And I found it even very interesting when you talked about these specialized schools where a carpenter can also look at what happens with doors and windows. I would use that as a metaphoric image, because I hope that all apprentices get the windows and the fresh air they need and open doors for their careers through their apprenticeship. So I think that's a very, metaphoric image of what apprenticeship should be. If I then turn to Miriam, I think we all know, if I may say, I hope I don't offend somebody, but we often say that the Dutch system is the most efficient one we have in the EU, or maybe Switzerland, but Switzerland is not part of the EU. But I think you have all the bodies you need in place. You can react with a lot of flexibility in your system, because you have the school-based and work-based integrated. But I think your key message, what I learned, and which is important for everybody, is also in bad times, please invest in apprenticeship. I think for me that is a very important message. And then if I go to Romania, I found it also very interesting. You mentioned particularly the competitiveness of SMEs, and luckily you have in Romania a system where the curricula allows some flexibility at the local and regional level. And that helps a lot, because SMEs are companies which have an advantage there to be flexible. I'm very happy that I think that the EU money is invested in a good way, because the funds which help you to build up a competence centers, I think it's very important. And one element I found interesting, particularly in a country where you still struggle a lot with qualified people leaving the country. I hope this trend will hopefully be soon over. But it's true that you mentioned that the average age of SMEs can be a real problem. I met one company in Berlin They have 100 people, it's a small company, and they have 20 apprentices. And they said simply, they calculate the average age, that they have a big competitive advantage to all their competitors, simply because the average age is much lower, because they count the apprentices in, of course. So I think I found it very interesting, and good luck with all your work also in Romania. And last but not least, if I come to Catalonia, of course, I think Spain is the country which does the most in the last years, really without having this tradition, like in Austria or other countries, but where you really push it. And I also know that the region of Catalonia is part of the alliance. All you do is, I think, extremely important. You mentioned that there is still a lack of information in the SMEs. And I think that we can all help you, also the European Alliance for Apprenticeship, to make really what Jeff said at the very beginning, that the SMEs don't not only see the costs, which are definitely there, but also the benefits. And hopefully that the benefits are higher at the end than the costs. And all you do on these mentors, I think that is extremely important to support the SMEs at local and regional level. Let me finish that. I hope that next year, because we were planning a meeting in Barcelona with the European Apprentices Network, but unfortunately because of COVID, we could not do it. But I really hope that we have a meeting next year in Barcelona and further discuss also all the efforts you do in Spain and in Catalonia particularly. That brings me back to Jeff, because I think you will also say a few words what's coming next. Many thanks again from my side to all of you, and also I hope for the audience that this was interesting. I'm convinced it was. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Norbert, and thanks to you others as well. I'd like to take this opportunity to announce some of the things that the Apprenticeship Support Services is doing. There's an online training module that's just gone on the website about new online digital education action plan and digitalization in apprenticeships. So I think that might be interesting for a number of you to see exactly what that's going to be. And finally, I would just like to thank you all for giving us some very interesting insight into what you're doing as far as apprenticeships are concerned. And I'd just like to remind our audience that there will be another EAfA event quite soon, which is the role of the regions and cities in delivering high quality apprenticeships for all. And that will be taking place on the 3rd to the 4th of June. So thanks to you all, you who've spoken and you who've listened. And it's been a very, very interesting opportunity to understand a little bit more about what's going on with apprenticeships. So thanks again. And that is the end of our session. Bye-bye.